Left of the box. So like I said, I'm not going to be dissecting the American election. It is lots of channels are dissecting that know more about American politics than I do. But there are connections. Canada is most likely going to have an election next year. Well, we are. Not most likely, we are. If it sticks to the calendar, it would be, I think, in the fall. But the vibe everyone is kind of picking up on is that it's going to be called early in the spring. And I know some people talking on Wednesday were saying that maybe the election in the States and seeing how Trump acts and stuff like that will wake Canadians up so that they won't vote Pierre Poilievre in. That's not the case. Not the case. Because especially if there's a spring election. Because even as soon as Donald Trump gets into office and he starts doing a lot of what he wants to do, the fallout from it won't be seen on time. And even then, a lot of it won't be connected to him. It'll be blamed on somebody else. So him being in office won't do anything to dissuade Canadians. In fact, him getting voted in probably encourages the right-wing base here. So it's actually far more likely that Pierre Poilievre will be voted in because they voted Trump in the United States, which is scary. But also just how quick the liberal establishment here was to fall in line is sickening. It's sickening. You know, no calling out fascism, but we'll call out anyone who is calling what's happening in Gaza a genocide. You know, they fall in line with fascists, but in whatever fascists do. But you know, should you say, you know what, genocide bad? Suddenly the Canadian government is like, we don't want you talking. Like, to me, not that I wasn't expecting this. It just happened so fast and it's so... I'm trying to find the right word for it. Justin Trudeau's tweet about the president of the United States, the new president, the old new president. Well, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network says, shameful, this is not politics as normal, and you do not have to congratulate a fascist whose party and policies will kill women, lower-income Americans, and scapegoat marginalized groups. And this is what Justin Trudeau had tweeted out. Congratulations to Donald Trump on being elected president of the United States. The friendship between Canada and the U.S. is the envy of the world. I know President Trump, and I will work together to create more opportunity, prosperity, and security for both of our nations. It's just gross. Picture of them being all buddy-buddy together. So sickening how quick they fall in line together. And the thing is Canada going down this same route of electing a far-right fascist rhetoric? Yes, it is. Pierre Poilievre himself, as I've explained before, is a potato. Like many people have said, they would vote for a rock against Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. Well, Pierre Poilievre is that potato. He is just that placeholder for the right-wing narrative. They don't care who that person is. They will vote for him. Pierre Poilievre himself has no personality. He has no opinions. He is just a blank and non-player character, NPC. That's all he is. And he will just do whatever the right tells him. So, as I've said, the danger with him isn't Pierre Poilievre. The danger is the right-wing rhetoric that he falls in line to. And it's a little bit on the flip side of like Donald Trump, because with Donald Trump, a lot of the fear is with him and how he leads the right-wing rhetoric. But with Pierre Poilievre, it's how he follows the right-wing rhetoric. Both extremely dangerous. And just some examples of how this is bad and all that sort of stuff. So did Pierre Poilievre get a security clearance yet? Asking for a nation. So there's been a lot of stuff in the news recently, especially with India having agents here committing assassinations, and that alert that went out to Canadians about the dangers and all that sort of stuff. And then it got brought up yet again how Pierre Poilievre doesn't have security clearance and how he's not going for it, how he's not even trying to apply for it. Yet if he becomes prime minister, he automatically gets it. I think it should be disqualifying because right now we don't know if he could or could not pass the security clearance vetting. If he can't pass it, that should be disqualifying. Security clearance should not just be granted just because. This should be done ahead of time, and if he doesn't qualify for it, disqualifying him as leader of the Conservatives or potential prime minister role. So the thing is that Yves François Blanchet, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, also did not have his security clearance when all of this was starting up. So do you know what he said? Fine, I'll get it. And he got it. And apparently he just got it. And so as David Beaudoin says, what does this tell you? Yves François Blanchet gets his top secret security clearance, reads the report, and immediately turns his attention to Poilievre. The one thing I will allow myself to say, Mr. Poilievre cannot make the necessary arrangements without obtaining his security clearance and reading the report. So basically, as soon as he saw the report and the unredacted stuff that the top secret security clearance granted you, all of a sudden he's like, so this could be a problem. I will read out the what he says because he is speaking in French and there's some English subtitles.
It clearly states that the Bloc Québécois is in no way at all responsible for the phenomenon of foreign interference. And it establishes without a doubt that all party leaders have a reflection to make
ont une réflexion à faire quant à comment
on how they can ensure that their caucus or potential candidate
caucus ou éventuel candidat
has not been, if at any cost,
sciemment
in the service of foreign interests.
Au service d'intérêts étrangers. Évidemment,
obviously it comes with knowledge.
Ça vient avec la connaissance de ce que contient le
rapport.
About
what is contained. Oops, that was quick. About what is contained within this report.
Rapport.
And obviously,
et évidemment, puisque c'est le seul, me permettrai de le dire.
Oops. Since it is the only one, I will allow myself to say, Mr. Poilievre cannot take
ne peut pas prendre les dispositions nécessaires sans avoir obtenu son accréditation de sécurité par
prior knowledge of this report.
Le reste
the rest
est évidemment
are obviously a set information that remains classified
qui resteront classifiées
and which
qui ne doivent pas
and which must not be made public.
Rendu public.
Sorry for being no longer distracting. Yeah. So he's showing some concern there about the Conservative caucus, potential people who are being influenced within. Because as Justin was saying when this report first came out, he wasn't directly saying that Pierre got into power because of interference. And he was trying to word it pretty and stuff by basically saying, you know, you should get the clearance so you at least know if any of your members are being targeted, because who knows, maybe they're being falsely targeted and you would want to back them up and stuff. Pierre's refusal to get the clearance, again, should be disqualifying because there's clearly issues within the Conservative Party when it comes to foreign interference, and Pierre is just shoving his head in the sand because he doesn't want to hear it so that he can keep up with his own narratives, tell his lies. Because as like the party leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May, said, she hasn't been muzzled. She's still been able to speak quite freely about a lot of things. So Pierre's excuse that it would muzzle him is wrong. And it would force him to tell the truth, which is something Pierre doesn't like to do much. It is just, again, it is This is where we start running into problems, is when we don't hold these people accountable to begin with. Nobody should be getting prime minister of this country without getting security clearance. You let that slide, what else is going to be let slide? Donald Trump should have been held accountable for January 6th. He wasn't. It got let slide. People just let it slide and let it slide and let it slide. And all these things that Pierre is doing, his lying, his refusal to get the clearance, all of this is they're just letting it slide. And what does that lead to? So it's always people on the left or the center who get punished quite severely for doing half of what they do. And the thing is that right-wing rhetoric that's been driving everything down in the States, it's up here too. Now, some people would say it's American-style politics coming up to Canada. I've probably even said that on occasions too, as a descriptor, but the reality is it was already here. That type of hatred, discrimination, it was already here. We're just starting to brand it, I guess, the same way as in the United States. We're starting to use the exact same language, the same catchphrases. And the States are picking up some of ours too, but the base for it, the hatred and all that sort of stuff, it was already here. And it's all in the Conservative Party, like across the country, the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party to some extent. And it's just what these politicians will do will destroy the world. And so here is Danielle Smith. There was a convention, and the convention voted 91% to keep her leader of the Alberta Conservative Party. So she is still premier. Come next election, if they get in, she'll still be premier. And this is what we can look to, like with the states and Doug Ford, Donald Trump, and the way that he wants to start drilling more and just total disregard for the environment. That's happening here too.
We will build new pipelines, oil and gas facilities, petrochemical plants, hydrogen plants, and more, because Alberta is an energy superpower, and that's another thing we will not apologize for either. And let me be clear, we are not phasing out any of our oil and gas industry. In fact, we're going to unapologetically double our oil and gas production while...
And meanwhile, I am having late spring, early summer temperatures in my area. We just broke records across the board for how warm it's been. I'm in freaking November, and we're in double digits. With conservatives in power, it's not going to get any better. And it's not just that, it's also LGBTQ rights. So here's a little clip from Pierre Poilievre, Prime Minister in waiting.
Follow up on the previous question and the video that Danielle Smith released. Where do the Conservatives stand on these issues that she had talked about in the video?
Oh, we stand for common sense, like on everything else. Our approach is to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
Catchphrase, 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 catchphrase.
And we extend that same, we extend common sense to all issues. Now, Justin Trudeau wants to use this as a wedge issue. He's now trying to distract from doubling housing.
The Conservatives are making human rights a wedge issue because none of this should be an issue. And he's basically just saying that Danielle Smith's approach to trans individuals, trans children, queer folks, well, that's just common sense to strip away their rights, to make it impossible for them to access treatment. According to the Conservatives, that's just common sense. But then they'll go and blame the Liberals for trying to divide the country on issues like that.
Costs, quadrupling the carbon tax, unleashing crime and chaos in our communities, forcing 2 million people to the food bank. And so he is spreading disinformation on this subject. And it's time for Justin Trudeau to stop distracting and dividing Canadians.
Stop doing exactly what I'm doing. And he also is just lying through his teeth. And this is just, again, the media had a lot to do with Donald Trump's reelection. The media has a lot to do with, this rise of fascism and the right-wing influence, because they're not calling him out on his lies in this moment. So if you're a low information voter and you just happen to come across this press conference and you see him saying all this stuff, how are you to know he's lying? The low information voter will just look at him like he's a politician. He's saying, and oh yeah, sure, all politicians lie. But how do they know he's lying about this? They don't. And then they just hear some things that sound good to them, and they move on, and they'll never hear the correction. They'll never hear how Pierre is lying to them.
Parents raise kids, and provinces run schools and hospitals. That's my common sense approach, and it's time to bring it home. Thank you.
Bring it home. And here's a little bit more stark comparison. And this is from PEI Political Discussion. Liberal Party of Canada, America's far right, is bullying vulnerable kids to score political points. Pierre Poilievre is bringing their political here to Canada. Again, it was already here in Canada. We're just starting to mimic the exact same language. But this hatred, this bigotry was already here. And in fact, we exported a fair bit of it down to the States. It's one of our biggest export is hatred.
Does not have a right to impose his radical gender ideology on our kids.
So that was super quiet. Again, sorry about that. But he says, Justin Trudeau does not have the right to impose his radical gender ideology onto our kids.
Left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children.
Woke gender ideology imposed in their curriculums.
Radical gender ideology.
Religion of gender ideology.
Proponents of radical gender ideology.
Radical gender ideology.
Radical gender ideology.
Trudeau does not have a right to impose his radical gender ideology on our kids.
It is scary to see what happened in the States. And my heart breaks for everyone there who will be harmed from all of this, which will be pretty much everyone except the 1%. But I'm also sitting here in dread, watching it about to come this way. Knowing this election in Canada is about to happen, and Pierre is most likely, unless there's drastic change, Pierre's going to be voted in as Prime Minister of this country. And they're going to have a majority and do whatever the hell they want. And it is terrifying because people in Canada have their head in the sand and they think that can't happen here. It can. And to some extent it has. A lot of this stuff has already happened. The rights have been taken away from trans children in a lot of schools across this country. What's happening with the encampments across the country, where they're now just saying, we'll just start rounding people up and forcing them into treatment. It's happening here already. Justin Trudeau loves to go up on stage and says, they will always protect a person's right to choose. And it is just words on a paper. It's not in practice. New Brunswick doesn't have any clinics you can go to for an abortion because they were so severely defunded by conservative governments. The Conservatives find workarounds, but the population of Canada, just here Justin Trudeau says, no, we'll protect it. Without realizing, no, he's not. The Liberal Party is not protecting our rights. And a lot of people don't know how bad it's gotten until it's something they need and they realize it's no longer there.